Hello, fight fans. I'm John Ramdeen, and this is Fight News Now Extra. Two former Pride heavyweights meet in the main event of UFC on Fuel TV 10. A former NFL star would love a shot at the UFC, and Freddie Roach is helping a former UFC champion with his form. Those are your day's headlines. Now let's find out more. Well, it is official. Former Pride and UFC heavyweight champion Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira is scheduled to meet fellow countryman Mauricio Werdum when the two face off in the main event of UFC on Fuel TV 10, which is set to take place in Fortaleza, Brazil on June 8th. The bout is a rematch as the two squared off at Pride Critical Countdown Absolute in 2006. Vi Cavallo is coming off back-to-back wins, while Minotauro earned submission of the night in his last fight against Dave Herman. Former Dallas Cowboy running back and Strikeforce veteran Herschel Walker has stated that he's looking for one more fight before hanging up the gloves and would love for it to be in the world-famous octagon. The 51-year-old, who hasn't fought in more than 2 years, told a Washington radio station that if he was younger, he would be pursuing a career in the sport, but will settle for one more bout before stepping aside for the youngsters rising the ranks. And lastly, Mauricio Shogun Rua has enlisted the aid of world-renowned boxing coach Freddie Roach to help him prepare for his UFC 1 tilt with Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. Initially, the wildcard gym owner wasn't overly impressed with the former light heavyweight champion's punching power, but after showing him proper technique, the Brazilian showcased power that even wowed him, who is set to meet Little Nogueira in Winnipeg on June 15th. Joining me, as always, my partner in crime, Mr. Robin Black. And Robin, finally we're seeing Shogun take the necessary steps to evolve his career. I think he just simply got in a comfort zone, and that can be problematic for any mixed martial arts fighter.
Well, yeah, Shogun is part of that old school of guys who, when they started, they just had violent knockouts. They showcased all kinds of power. And really, MMA back when he started was about heart and guts and drive and just wanting it more than the other guy. But now we're seeing these youngsters come along with fully developed skill sets, and guys like Shogun are doing the right thing.
What's interesting is that if you go back and you look at the roots of a lot of these fighters, they have a specific base. We know Johnny Hendricks has a wrestling base. Carlos Condit has a submission or a Muay Thai background. The guys that come from Brazil, specifically the Shooter Box Academy, have that drop your weight and slug it out style. How do you fix that?
Well, yeah, I mean, what's their base? It's not wrestling, it's not jiu-jitsu, it's not even Muay Thai. It's just a violence base, a base of aggressive violence. It's a great place to start. It's a great place to win fights. It's a great way to, showcase how exciting you are. And we love watching fighters like that. But you almost have to go back to the drawing board with these guys who are lifting their foot off the ground when they're throwing right hands, and they're not turning their hips on hooks, and all of these very, almost real specific basics. You go back to the drawing board and you reprogram them, but when you do, they can be monsters.
It can be difficult, though, because Shogun, in his 30s right now, has to go back and unlearn some of the bad habits, and I think that could be, yes, a challenge for him, but a good challenge for Freddie Roach to try to mold something out of something that already existed.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure as a boxing coach, Freddie Roach is probably just enjoying this like crazy. You're taking a guy who, in theory, is doing things wrong and knocking people out. He's doing things wrong and winning fights. How cool would that be to go in and make these little adjustments, reteach him things, and imagine what kind of power a guy like Shogun's going to have.
We go from one Brazilian to two Brazilians. Big Nog taking on Mauricio Werdum, and Werdum really hitting his stride right now. I think he could challenge for the UFC heavyweight championship anytime soon. I don't know if I necessarily like this match because Nogueira is kind of the legends, and yes, I have a bias. This guy's so exciting.
Yeah, you do.
But the fact is that why not give this guy, interesting matchups, stylistic matchups that are going to entertain the crowd. I think most people expect Mauricio Werdum to win this fight and win it quite handily.
Yeah, but the thing is, and you know this, man, Nogueira cannot be counted out in any fight. And sometimes, we're looking at what is the storyline when we set guys up. First of all, this fight will be fascinating because Werdum is theoretically a better ground fighter than Nogueira, and you can't say that about very many people, so that's interesting. But you set up this scenario where Nogueira, in fights he's supposed to lose, sometimes just excites the crowd. In Brazil, he's better than anywhere. This is a great fight for an old legend to prove he still belongs.
The problem I have, you say Nogueira's a guy that can surprise you, and yes, he can surprise Dave Herman, and he can surprise Brendan Schaub, but when he's facing the upper echelon of guys, where does he fit in?
Well, in Brazil, he gets celebrated as a warrior no matter what happens. Two Brazilian superheroes fighting. I mean, in Brazil, that's going to be brilliant. And people are going to go crazy for it. But I mean, yeah, this is the problem we get to when guys get into their later 30s. You know, they're still the leather helmet football players that we love. But how do these guys beat young, brilliant football players of the new generation? It's the same analogy.
We can only hope that these guys put on the show that we know that they're capable of having. More from Fight News Now Extra when we return.